Hello, this is Mr. Martin again, and again we're talking about theatrical construction of scenic units. This particular episode is geared mostly toward specifically our Camdenton students because I'm going to look at the saw that we specifically use and how to use the table that goes with it, the stand, to make more accurate, repeatable cuts and save yourself an awful lot of time and effort. So, before using this, you should have studied up on your safety. We're just going to do a very, very brief review of that because you can't get too much. For starters, we note I am dressed appropriately. I've got my goggles on. Always, always wear eye protection. You're also going to note that while handling this, not only do I have it turned off, but it's unplugged. Do not ever, especially touch the blade, operate on the saw, try to make adjustments with the saw plugged in, okay? Because if you were to hit the button, anything, or if there's a short, you don't want that saw. If it will cut through a 2x4, it'll cut through your arm, okay? Now, having said that, and I'm going to emphasize this in every piece of machinery we talk about, don't fear the machines, but do have respect, okay? If you respect this, if you do everything that you're supposed to do every time, you're not going to get hurt and people around you will not get hurt. It takes one time of not doing your part, and that includes checking the condition of the saw or violating any of the safety protocols. But if you always, always, always follow the safety protocols, you'll always be safe. So we've used this equipment for a long time with absolutely no severe accidents, and we are ready to keep that record. So let's do a quick review. This is what we call a miter saw. This particular saw is designed for cutting wood and non-ferrous metals only, as noted in a lot of your videos. So this is a great tool for certain applications, and those applications are going to be to make cuts in wood. And I'm going to step around here a second. So straight or 90-degree cuts, miter cuts, and even what we call bevel cuts, which we really don't use a lot in theater. But I'm going to stay behind this for a moment to show you some of the key components. A reminder again. Okay, so we've got this one locked down. We've got a little button back here. You can pop back. That will allow this to come up, and that's what you want to do before operating. We've got a blade guard, which is really important. One of the things you always want to do is check. See how that operates smoothly as we bring the saw down. If that doesn't happen, then don't use the saw, okay? But we can pull that back manually if we want to see the blade. And again, note I'm touching the blade with this thing unplugged. So we've got the blade. This particular model, our trigger, is right here in this D handle. And then we will have some adjustments. We have a fence. We have our angle adjustments for our miter cuts. But what can save you a ton of time, and what we're going to focus on for especially our Camdenton students, is using this stand properly. There are a lot of stands similar to this, but this particular one's made by DeWalt and our saw is made by Hitachi, so we're mixing up the brands a little, which is just fine because this has a universal adapter. But one of the things that we run into with hand saws is when you are making a variety of cuts and you want them all to be exactly alike. With a hand saw you have to measure, mark, cut, measure, mark, cut, measure, mark, cut, which takes an awful lot of time. With this, once you're set up, let's say you need a whole bunch of boards at 45 inches or something like that, or 23 inches. You can, number one, do it a lot faster, and number two, you can do it much more accurately, especially when you're, say, legging up a platform. And the really important thing is not that all of your legs are exactly 43 inches long, but if it's 42 and 7/8, that all of the other legs are 42 and 7/8 as well. Because just even a 1/4 of an inch difference in a leg on a platform can really scare an actor when they're up high and it's rocking. So let's look at how to do that. So we see what we have is the stand. Then we have these stops. Now the nice thing about these is they can either be a support. My camera person wants to kind of zoom in over here on this angle and kind of see what we've got going here. So you'll note within the stand there's a groove. Okay? Now that groove looks like kind of a pain because sawdust can build up in it and stuff, but that allows us to make this adjustment with our stop or support, whichever role it's going to serve. And you'll see what I mean by that. If I flip this down, I've now got a support. This is lined up to be the exact same height as our working surface on the saw. And so it will support our piece of lumber and keep it from tipping and falling away. And a lot of people will use it for that, not realizing that they've got this really awesome tool of a stop. And what I mean by that is if we flip this up and tighten this down, now we slide our board in, get it secure against the fence, and it stops right here. And so every cut that we make is going to be exactly the same length. Okay? So all you have to do, once you get it set up properly, and measure that, and what I always do, let me grab my tape measure real quick. I measure, now I am going to plug in for just a second. This particular saw has a laser. Which, now a bad thing is with the laser, is if you're in the daylight, you're not going to be able to see that unless you're in the shade. But the laser tells you where you're cut. So if I measure and make my mark and I'll line the laser up, then it will cut right in the middle. Now some saws are offset, but this one cuts right where the laser. But remember that our blade will make what we call kerf, which is it takes out an amount of wood for the width of the cut. But this can operate as our stop, and it's very versatile in that, slide this over a minute, the stop or support can slide this whole length. Now you may get discouraged here and go, hey, well, I can't cut a very long board. But here's the cool thing. Note this end cap, okay? You can slide that on in. Now see what I've done? And then you tighten this up again. And what we have here is a knob to secure that. And then this will just keep sliding on out so that you've got quite a lengthy support and or stop. So you can cut boards, say 6 feet long, and still be very, very repeatable. Now typically what I do, I'm going to cross over here. If I'm going to cut boards that long, see we've got the same thing on this end. So you can cut from either direction. This one doesn't extend out as far, but I also can take this out and I can slide this one in so that I have both a stop and a support. And that's especially useful if cutting kind of heavy lumber. So I can set it up for my length, and I can have an additional support. So with this one being the support with it flipped down, this one being the stop with it flipped up, you can save yourself a ton of time and effort if you will use it. And so when we're cutting things like stair railings, platform legs, if we're making we're making several platforms or flats, we can cut our middles and they'll all be exactly the same length. So again, to review real quickly, we've looked at the stand specifically and its uses in terms of being a support and a stop, depending on how you do it, and it's going to give you a ton of flexibility to use for those purposes. Thank you.